Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there, to the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers. Welcome. I'm here today with Jen Perry, who we're going to be doing some episodes together. It's a great episode. And here's an exercise in flexibility. We recorded 2 episodes, and it wasn't until we were done that the first episode didn't record Jen's track. So when we start on this episode, it's a part 2 to the first one. I'm going to bring you up to speed a little bit, and once we can re-record the first track, we'll go back and we're just going to go with the flow. I have a listener whose name is Tosh from Wellington, New Zealand, and she wrote a question into the podcast. I wasn't going to read a little bit of complimentary things that she said because my tasky brain was on, but in the first episode, Jen read it, and I figured we didn't have to do it in the second episode. But since you're not hearing the first episode first, I'm just going to go ahead and read it. And she just says, I'm so grateful to have found your podcast. Thank you for being yourself so authentically and sharing your inner workings with us. Every time I listen, I feel encouraged, affirmed, and a little bit wiser. So thank you so much for that, Tosh. I really appreciate it. In this episode, we answer a couple of Tosh's questions that we didn't address in the other episode that you're not going to hear, at least not yet. But Tosh is asking us about social anxiety and confidence, and Jen and I talk a little bit about that. We talk about some tools. So if it feels like you might be missing something that we talked about in the previous episode, it's because you did, and we don't have it. We're going to have to recreate it. I think you're really going to enjoy this. Jen talks about some resources about how to ask questions and to get engaged. We talk about the wound of too much and not enough, and how we really need to kind of reframe things so that we can feel the fear. And I think we have this belief that we wait until we have confidence to do things. And often we need to find out how much distress tolerance do we have. And we do the thing, and that's what leads to having confidence over time. We also talk about having expectations that are maybe more realistic. And I think many HSPs struggle with some form of social anxiety. My guess is that the belief is that I'm the only one that struggles. And we look at the non-highly sensitive extroverts who are out there having a great time. And for me, even being an extrovert, sometimes I get anxious in social situations. So knowing that we're not alone in that and that it's okay to have that awkward, geeky stuff that goes on, and can we just let that be okay? Anyways, I want to go to the episode. I think you're really going to enjoy it. And now, on to the show. Hey, Jen, how are you?
Hi, Patricia.
So between recording, my tasky brain is on, and I said, Jen, should we make some chit chat? And she's like, well, people are missing out. Well, why don't you say what you said? I won't say it for you.
Well, I think the first thing I said is, well, it's your podcast. I love your tasky self. I need more of a tasky part. But yeah, then I said, that imagining the podcast episodes as they're rolling out, if they're a little bit too much to the point, it may not be, I don't know, might not get any of that fun banter between you and me, which of course you can't script either. So I don't know.
I know. And when my tasky brain is on, she has no empathy, no sense of humor. She just wants to get stuff done. And so if you notice between episodes, some of them are a little bit more light and fun, and that some of them are just very down to business. That's just my very tasky brain overriding everything else. So
that's so fun. My ADHD brain really needs your tasky brain. I got to tell you that.
Yeah. I have an ADHD brain too, but when my tasky brain gets on, then we just get stuff done. So anyways,
yes.
Anything you want to share about briefly that's going on in your life that would be considered chit chat that people might enjoy?
Oh my goodness. Well, we already went over how much I'm not supposed to curse on the podcast. So that eliminates some segment of how I would normally describe parts of my life. Let's see. I have a day off today, which is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And we're sitting in the middle of the holidays. It's just the day after solstice. while we're recording this, and I've been focusing on rest, which is really, really hard for me to do. Mm-hmm. So I am, though, starting to relax into that and enjoy myself, which I think is actually related to a question that we have coming up a little later. So I can definitely talk more about that there. Life is good. It's my first Christmas in a new house, and just trying to savor it a bit. It all goes just so fast. Mm-hmm. How about you? I'm over there in sunny California. I'm over here in Philly.
I know. I'm tasky. I want to get started.
Tell me just a little bit about a palm tree, please.
The weather's been pretty nice. It's cold. It's been a little hard to paddle because it's cold. And so I haven't been out as much this week. I'm writing my book, which I'm really enjoying. Looking forward to Christmas, and the boys will be home. One son's only coming home for one day. He's got to turn around and go home. So that's kind of a drag, but he's going to leave his big dog with us for a week. So I'm looking forward to having a big dog. Gracie's been having a lot of health problems. She's on medication 5 times a day. Aww. 5 a.m., 7 a.m., 1 p.m., 7 p.m., 9 p.m., 9 medications, 2 syringes. She's fine. It's what we need to do right now. But I'm kind of looking forward to having a sighted dog that I don't need to be sticking my fingers down his mouth 9 times a day.
Well, I hope that big dog doesn't do what my big dog just did.
I hope he doesn't either. He's been here before, but never without my son. And when he's at home without my son, he does go in the house. And so we don't know where he's going to go.
Yeah. Right before we started recording today, my dog decided to empty some trash, like right on my bed, and chew it up, which was lots of fun to clean up.
On the brand new white comforter.
I know. I'm so mad. But they're great. I enjoy them, as mischievous and crazy as they are. So That's great. I'll enjoy them.
I think it'll be good. Okay, task.
Okay.
We did a previous episode where Tosh from Wellington, New Zealand wrote in some questions, and there were 2 questions that she didn't get to. So I'm going to read one at a time. We're going to discuss it, and then we have a third anonymous question that somebody else wrote in. So Tosh said, I recently realized that even the people closest to me don't know much about me because I just don't feel like I'm any good at talking.
What this is bringing up for me, I was an English major, my undergrad. And, language, to me, it's a miracle any of us can communicate anything at all, really. We have these series of sounds and syllables, language, right, that is symbolically representing a 360-degree experience, right? And actually, even more than that, if you talk about your inner experience too. So I think sometimes taking a real big step back and, again, appreciating how limited language really is to express our most inner experiences and narratives and, stories about who we are. Is even that, like, it's just one angle on the story, right? Like, you can only tell it from one point of view or one perspective at a time. So I don't know. I suspect when I find myself thinking thoughts like this, just forget it. I'm just no good at talking. I can't possibly relate everything that's going on. I just want to validate that and affirm that we're all just really doing the best we can with this symbolic languaging that we have, right? And that I just want to start with it's a miracle that we can impart our experiences, to others at all. And to take that breath and realize that you can't fit it all in. This is why it takes time, right? It takes time to get to know people. George O'Keeffe said that it takes time to see a flower. To be really patient. It really is difficult. And I think as HSPs, we kind of have an innate sense of that. We can just sort of be like, just give up, as opposed to starting in that really fertile place of, I'm going to try, and then I'm going to try again. And I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do it that way. And I'm going to see how receptive, right? How fertile is that ground over there, the person who's receiving it? It's like if you throw a ball at someone, it's partly how you throw it, but it's also the skill of the catcher. So it's this dance that we do together. And if we can do it creatively and with some patience, I know that the people in our lives want to know us, just like we want to know them, right? And so this intimacy, right? This into me you see, it's really a very creative endeavor to be able to describe our experiences, our points of view, our sensations, our thoughts, our memories. So I dip into awe. I'm like, whoa, I can't even believe we're doing this together. It's so fascinating. And from that, I would just take heart, right? And play. I try to be playful about it. Don't expect too much because you can't do it. You're trying to fit an ocean in a thimble, So from there, lower the bar, right? Aren't we always saying that? Lower the bar and then just have a little fun.
Mm-hmm. I guess the things that come up for me is, we talked about this in the last episode where we talked about social anxiety, is when we have that wound of too much, we also have that wound of not enough. I don't have anything to say. Nobody wants to hear what I have to say. So that's part of the wound. And if we've heard that from other people or have gotten that sense, and we often reinforce that for ourselves, and y'all know I've got that wound of too much and not enough. So my question, Tosh, is, do you know what it is that you're thinking and feeling that you want to say and you're just not saying it? Or is it that you just have things to express, but you don't even know what they are and how to express them? Because I think it's important to know where you're coming from. And if you know, but you're just not expressing it, what is it that you imagine would happen if you did express it? And are there people that you can express that with? And if you don't know, then what are some tools and some ways that we can get you clear on what it is that you're thinking and feeling so that you can start sharing and expressing that? Do you have any thoughts about that, Jen?
No, I think that's a great perspective to bring on it. As you were talking, I was thinking when I was much younger, really occurring to me that I think a lot in pictures. And so sometimes if I can describe a picture of something as a way of trying to get in, I guess I'm still thinking about the playfulness and the creative license when we tell our stories. I do think that's a great distinction that you're making, is it that you know how to tell your story, but you're afraid it's too much? Or you don't necessarily trust that you have the skill to tell the story, which again, a skill can be strengthened. You just got to practice. And also, I suspect that it could be a bit of both, right? Weaving in there together.
Yeah. I think too, if we have that wound of too much and not enough, and you and I have done this in our personal relationship, that I don't want to overwhelm you, I don't want to be too much, and that you have young kids, your life is busier and fuller in different ways than mine is. And we use an app called Marco Polo. And I've been concerned of, if I send you a polo and I don't hear back from you, I don't want to overwhelm you by leaving you more polos. And you've said, like, I love hearing from you and you don't have to wait. That part of that healing that we've done is me being vulnerable and going like, oh, I don't want to be too much. What's okay? What's not enough? And you going like, I have room for all of you. And that has been so healing. And I find myself doing that in other relationships, because I can't tell you how many of us have this wound of too much and not enough, that we go through something that's hard and we pull back and we feel like we can't kind of come out of our turtling until we're in a happy, joyous place. And the healing comes from showing up messy, uncomfortable, depressed, awkward, uncomfortable, and having somebody love all of those parts of us. And then we learn that all of us is okay, so we don't have to go back and hide when we're not doing well. And then we only come out to show people the shiny, perfect parts.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. In sitting with Tasha's question here, I just had another thought. And my son does this to me. He'll want me to ask him questions. Ask him questions about his day, or what do you want to know about my friends, and and stuff like that. Sometimes if you really are wanting to practice this, right? So I do think that there's, in Tasha's question here, there's a lot of how do I find to practice and a practice partner. I do think that making good use of book of questions, it can also give you a way in. It gives you a bit of a framework. When I was getting to know my partner, we did that. We asked, I don't know, Patricia, if you remember this, I think it was in a New Yorker article or something, where it was these sets of questions to fall in love, actually. And you got to be careful, because this really works. So if you're going to do it, make sure you really want that. It was beautiful, this beautiful unfolding. And then it turns out, I didn't realize it, but the author of the questions was Elaine Aron's husband, Arthur Aron, who studies love. It's really interesting. I mean, that's obviously that type of relationship, right? A romantic or a loving relationship that way. I'm sure that there are lots of good questions too, just for platonic relationships and getting to know people deeply. So even if, you can journal some of those questions, I'm kind of wondering about like flipping it around too. Tosh, what are the things that you want to know about other people? And because we're all human, it's very likely that those things that you're curious about other people, they're curious about it, about you. And to start there.
I'm wondering how many of us, because I certainly was told that I was nosy and I asked too many questions. And it really shut me down. And when we started talking about this, it's like, ugh, I hate having to ask questions. I mean, if it's someone I'm comfortable with and we have a rapport, then I ask questions, but I'm not one to just pull questions out of the blue. But I think that a lot of my natural curiosity was stunted because I got that feedback of being too nosy or asking too many questions. And as HSPs, we're genuinely very, very curious and love learning and love knowing about things. But then that layer of wounding, I think, can make it difficult to have that natural curiosity, that playfulness that you were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed that in my daughter. She's 9 right now and she comes out with stuff. And I'm like, Liv, a lot of people might not be comfortable talking about that until they've known you a little more than 5 minutes. All that natural curiosity. Yeah. It does get shut down. I do think that if you're talking with a friend, I guess, what do we call it? Like a meta conversation, right? So having a conversation about the conversation. I know I tell people nowadays, I'm like, I think my gauge is a little off because of my work as a counselor. I'm like, I have awkward conversations for a living. So if any of my questions feel awkward, like I invite them to just let me know. And that, of course, they are free to not answer any question I might ask. But yeah, for sure, getting over that sense that some questions might not be polite. And that's just asking permission. That's again doing this dance together, right? Yeah.
And Tasha's last question is, how can I gain the confidence to share more of my experiences? And how can I manage the anxiety that prevents me from talking around new people? I would love to hear any ideas you might have on this.
Well, I hope across these 2 episodes, Tosh, that we've given you lots of ideas, and I guess to try to sum them up a little bit, confidence is something that comes after we do the thing. We always think, I need the confidence to do it before I do the thing. And that's just not how it works. Self-confidence, self-esteem, these are inherently unstable constructs depending on what we're doing in life. Something that I like to rely on a little bit more is self-compassion practice, because that can be more robust and steady. So as you are stepping out of your comfort zone, Patricia mentioned the breathing and the, taking in your environment around you. We were talking about that wild animal of your nervous system and, trying to calm it a bit, right? With your breath, with a pause, taking your time, bringing the understanding that there's not a thing wrong with you. Your nervous system is acting in the way it was designed from however long ago in evolution. And to be really gentle and patient with yourself, right? As you practice and take those risks, stepping out of your comfort zone bit by bit. I hope that you can find someone to Marco Polo with, or that you use a journal, ways to just practice and managing I'm trying to get away from calling it anxiety. It's really like activation, because it's so close to excitement. I mean, anxiety is so close to in our nervous system, it's fight or flight or freeze, right? Most of the time. There's fib and fawn in there too, which are interesting. We can talk about that some other time. And so it's more about, bringing that wild animal really gently along with you as you take those steps. Just to be good to yourself, right? All that self-care. If you're going to be challenging your growth game like this, right? You're going to be challenging yourself. Make sure you're sleeping well. Make sure you're eating, nourishing yourself well, taking that rest, perhaps working with a counselor that can help you with these kinds of things and give you that sounding board and place to be vulnerable. Absolutely. I know you can do this. It's not easy. I always think it's worth it. I love having a good, strong growth game. You got this. So that self-trust, that comes with that self-compassion. I'd love to hear back from you. I'd love to hear if these episodes have helped and what steps you've taken.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'm smiling because you have such a holistic approach. I'm like, get the answers, answer them, and get off. And you're like, Tosh, I want to talk to you. It's like you have this holistic approach. Tosh, follow up with me. It's like it's so right on. And this is just my tasky brain. It's just like, just get stuff done. So the other thing I was wondering, Tosh, is do you have this expectation that socializing, that it should look like the non-sensitive extroverts? Because it just may be that your nervous system is going to get a little bit more janked up than somebody else. And I'm wondering if your expectation is that you should be calm, cool, collected, and outgoing. And we talk about this window of tolerance for discomfort. And we kind of need to have a little bit of discomfort. And it's okay to be in that window of tolerance. And I'm wondering if you just kind of know that my nerves can get jangled, not so much that you're so dysregulated that you can't manage, but it's okay to be a little bit jangled and a little angsty if you are having things that are new and then you finish it and you go, how was that? Did I manage it? Scale of 1 to 10. Could I do it again? And you just work your way through it. As I've shared with some of my paddling, I've had to do this. I keep expecting that things are going to be comfortable and easy, and sometimes they're not. And it's almost a story that I tell myself about the nerves that ruins it for me. And so I was talking with my paddling partner and said, I'm just going to give myself until spring to be anxious about going out in the ocean. And she's like, why don't you give yourself a year? And then I kind of felt like, I could be anxious on and off for a whole year. That feels pretty good. So can we give ourselves permission to just be awkward, uncomfortable, and let that be okay and just have that be the baseline? And then if you do the thing and you're still anxious, awkward, and uncomfortable, you did the thing.
Yes, and that's where your confidence will grow.
Yeah.
You should see me. I'm a train wreck in social situations. I was just like, yeah, it's awkward, isn't it? And then, when she can speak to that sometimes, it just sort of pops. So I think, Patricia's point, how are you expecting it to look? And can you kind of embrace what it is instead of that idea of what it should be?
Yeah. My guess is that if we polled a bunch of HSPs, and maybe I'll do this, if you're in the closed Facebook group called Unapologetically Sensitive, and if you're a listener, this episode's not going to come out until January sometime. So if you're a listener and you're in the closed Facebook group, would you either shoot me a text or something or post in the Facebook group, and let's ask how many of y'all have some level of anxiety and discomfortness, awkwardness, geekiness around new social situations? Because except for the hardcore extroverts, they're like, I'm there. I'm all in. I'm all that. I love it. And I'm a highly sensitive extrovert, and I still get sometimes awkward and uncomfortable. I think once we find out that more of us feel this way than not, it might be like, oh, I'm just going to go into my geeky awkwardness. Here we go.
Oh, and it's so fun when you throw it out there and you find your people,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's by being honest.
Yeah, which is the gift about talking about these things, that we find out that we're not the only one. And then it's like, okay, so a lot of people feel this way, but they just don't talk about it. Even the other day, I was paddling with my partner, Brenda. We went out in the ocean. I have these geeky glasses that are supposed to help with seasickness. I don't think that they did. But we went out and I started to feel a little seasick. So we came back, and then we were talking when we were coming back down the channel that she was feeling a little uncomfortable being in the ocean too. And we just had a real honest discussion about how uncomfortable was it, what thoughts came up for us. She says, most people are not going to talk to you about this. I'm obviously an open book about how much things scare me and make me anxious, but I'm the exception to the rule. And it was just so nice to hear that from her. And if she didn't, I just know this goes on for me. So there is power in sharing the things that we feel fearful or anxious about. And when we find out we're not alone, it's just like, just changes the whole script that we have around it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. We are going to end this. We will talk to you later. Thanks for being here today, Jen.
My pleasure, as always.
All right. Bye. Hey again. So I'm curious to know what you thought of the episode. This one was a little lighter and more fun than the first episode, so maybe it's a good thing that it didn't turn out and we will have to re-record it. I don't know. If you heard things in this episode that you're struggling with and you want some support around them, Jen and I are able to help you. And if you're a newer listener, I'm not sure if you know, but Jen and I are both licensed therapists. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. Jen is an LPC, I believe. We live in different states. We both do coaching. We found a model for working with HSPs that's really helpful for coaching, but I often wonder if people don't reach out to me because they're not clear about the differences between therapy and coaching, or they don't know that I'm trained as a therapist. That's what my background is. And when I started working with HSPs, I found a way of working with HSPs that seems to be effective. I always want to quantify and clarify. If you're struggling and you want to work with either Jen or I, Jen's information is in the show notes. And you can reach out to me at unapologeticallysensitive.com. I'm not functioning very well right now. I have a couple spots left. I do have a couple spots left. Oh my gosh. I so want to re-record this, and I'm just going to trust that done is better than perfect, and it's okay to show up being human. It's later in the day. I usually don't record this late. I've been doing some writing on my book. My brain has been heavily taxed. This is what you get. Happy New Year. I hope you're doing well. I love hearing from you. I think that's all I have. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's our superpower. Have a blessed day.